The clubhouse parking lot fell deadly silent. 8 leather-clad Hells Angels suddenly stopped their bikes and surrounded a small black girl standing alone near the entrance. Engines cut. Leather creaked. The men dismounted in perfect unison, their expressions unreadable behind dark sunglasses. Families nearby grabbed their children. Someone whispered, "Call the police." But the bikers ignored everyone, their attention locked entirely on her. Then, without warning, the massive men dropped to one knee, forming a protective circle. The girl stood frozen, clutching a worn teddy bear to her chest. "Please don't be mad," she whispered, her voice barely audible. No one understood what was happening until the club president removed his sunglasses, revealing tears streaming down his weathered face. And when they finally discovered why, the truth behind that moment left everyone speechless. If you believe in the power of observation, in trusting your instincts, and in the courage it takes to speak up when something feels wrong, then pause for a moment. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to Black Iron Tales. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from today, because this story will remind you that heroes come in all sizes, and sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages. It was supposed to be an ordinary Saturday afternoon at the Iron Brotherhood Clubhouse in Northern California. The rumble of Harley engines, the smell of barbecue smoke, and classic rock blasting from outdoor speakers created the familiar soundtrack of their monthly charity ride. Children played on the grass while their parents mingled with the bikers who'd gathered to raise money for the local veterans hospital. Until a sound cut through the noise. Not a shout or a scream, but something quieter. A child's sob. Every head turned. 8 members of the club's road crew had suddenly cut their engines mid-arrival. They stood motionless beside their bikes, staring at something near the clubhouse entrance. One by one, they dismounted and began walking forward in synchronized silence. The crowd parted nervously. Marcus "Tank" Rodriguez, the club president, led the formation. His 6'4" frame cast a long shadow, his scarred knuckles visible even from a distance. Behind him, 7 others followed. Big Mike, Chains, Reaper, Doc, Steele, Ghost, and Junior, all wearing their patches, all moving with purpose. And there, standing alone on the cracked pavement, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Dark skin, bright pink sneakers, hair pulled back in 2 careful braids tied with yellow ribbons. She wore a faded purple dress that was too big for her small frame, and she clutched a brown teddy bear missing one eye. Her face was streaked with tears. The crowd held its breath. Parents instinctively pulled their children closer. Someone muttered, "What's she doing here?" Another whispered, "Should we call someone?" But before anyone could move, the 8 bikers surrounded her completely, blocking her from view. Tank stopped 3 feet away, his jaw tightened. The other men formed a protective semicircle, their backs to the crowd. "Hey there, little one," Tank said, his deep voice softening in a way most people had never heard. "You okay?" The girl shook her head, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to come here. I didn't know where else to go." Big Mike knelt down slowly, his massive frame still towering over her even on one knee. "You're not in trouble, sweetheart," he said gently. "But we need to know. Are you safe? Is someone hurting you?" She nodded, then shook her head, then burst into sobs. "It's not me," she managed between gasps. "It's the babies." The men exchanged glances. Tank's expression hardened. "What babies?" Within minutes, the clubhouse patio had been cleared. The 8 bikers led the frightened little girl inside, while Chains stood guard at the door, his arms crossed, his face grim. No one was getting through. Inside, the girl sat on a worn leather couch that seemed to swallow her whole. Steele brought her a glass of water. Doc grabbed a blanket from the back room and draped it around her shoulders. Tank sat across from her, elbows on his knees, his voice calm but firm. "What's your name, honey?" "Emma," she whispered, hugging the teddy bear tighter. "Okay, Emma, I'm Marcus, but everyone calls me Tank. These are my brothers. We're not going to hurt you, but we need you to tell us what's going on. Can you do that?" She nodded slowly, her small fingers twisting the bear's worn ear. "I live 2 streets over," she began, "with my auntie, but she's not really my auntie. She just takes care of kids, lots of kids." Reaper leaned forward. Foster care? Emma shook her head. No, she doesn't have papers or anything. She just keeps us. Says the government pays her for each one. Tank's jaw clenched. How many kids? 12, Emma said quietly, in a house with 2 bedrooms. The room fell silent. Ghost cursed under his breath. Junior stood abruptly and walked to the window, his fists tight. Emma, Doc said gently, crouching beside her, why did you come here? Her eyes filled with tears again. Because yesterday I heard her on the phone. She said she was getting rid of the little ones, that they cry too much and aren't worth the money. She said, Emma's voice broke. She said she was going to leave them somewhere far away so nobody would find them. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Tank stood slowly, his face like stone. Where are these babies now? Still at the house, Emma whispered, but she's leaving tonight. She told me to pack my stuff too, but I ran away. I didn't know what to do. I remembered seeing you guys at the food drive last month. You gave me a stuffed animal. She held up the one-eyed teddy bear. You said if I ever needed help, real help, I should come find you. Big. Mike covered his mouth with one hand. Chains walked to the corner and pulled out his phone. Tank knelt in front of Emma, his eyes level with hers. You did the right thing coming here, Emma. You understand me? You did exactly the right thing. She nodded, tears streaming. But what about the babies? She's leaving soon. What if she already... She hasn't, Tank said firmly, and she won't. I promise you that. He stood and turned to his brothers. His voice dropped to a growl. Chains, call Detective Rivera. Tell her we need her here now. Ghost, get the van ready. Doc Jr., you're with me. Big Mike, stay here with Emma. Don't let her out of your sight. Steele stepped forward. What are we doing? Tank's eyes burned with cold fury. We're going to get those kids. 20 minutes later, 2 unmarked police cars and a white van pulled up outside the clubhouse. Detective Maria Rivera, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who'd worked with the club before, stepped out and strode inside. Emma repeated her story, her voice steadier now, strengthened by the presence of the 8 men who'd refused to leave her side. Rivera made notes, asked careful questions, and then looked at Tank. You know I can't just raid the place without a warrant. Tank's face didn't change. Then get one. That takes time. We don't have time, Tank said. Emma heard her say tonight, that's in a few hours. Rivera hesitated, then sighed. If I show up at a judge's door on a Saturday evening with this, I need more than hearsay from a 7-year-old. Emma stood up suddenly. I can show you proof, she said. I took pictures. Every head turned. Emma pulled a cracked smartphone from her dress pocket. It's my old phone. Auntie doesn't know I still have it. I hid it under the floorboard. I took pictures of the house, the kids, everything. Because I was scared nobody would believe me. Rivera took the phone carefully and scrolled through the photos. Her face went pale. Images of children sleeping on bare mattresses, a closet packed with toddlers, empty food containers piled in corners, a calendar on the wall with dates circled and the words, "Drop off," written in red marker. Jesus Christ, Rivera whispered. Tank's voice was ice. Still need a warrant? Rivera looked up at him, then at the 8 bikers standing like a wall behind Emma. No, she said quietly. I don't. The motorcycles roared through the neighborhood like thunder. Tank led the formation, Emma sitting safely in the van behind them with Big Mike and Detective Rivera. The address Emma gave was less than 2 miles away, a rundown house with peeling paint and overgrown weeds. The windows were covered with sheets. 2 cars sat in the driveway. Rivera radioed for backup, but Tank was already off his bike and moving toward the front door. Marcus, wait, Rivera called. He didn't wait. The door crashed open under Tank's boot. Inside, the smell hit them first. Spoiled food, dirty diapers, unwashed bodies. The living room was dark except for a flickering TV. A woman in her 50s spun around from the couch, eyes wide with shock and fury. What the hell do you think you're... Where are they? Tank growled. The woman's face twisted. Get out of my house! Tank stepped forward and she stumbled back. I said, where are the kids? Before she could answer, a small cry echoed from upstairs, then another and another. Rivera pushed past Tank and ran toward the sound, her hand on her weapon. The 8 bikers followed, their boots heavy on the creaking stairs. What they found in the bedrooms would haunt them for years. 12 children, ranging from 6 months to 9 years old. Most were dirty, underfed, their eyes hollow and tired. 3 toddlers were locked in a closet. 2 infants lay in a single crib with soiled sheets. The older kids cowered in corners, terrified by the sudden noise and strangers. Doc, a former Army medic, moved immediately to the babies. "We need paramedics, now." Rivera was already on the radio. Within minutes, sirens filled the street. EMTs, social workers, more police. The house flooded with help. The woman was arrested on the spot, screaming obscenities as she was led away in handcuffs. The children were carefully carried outside, wrapped in blankets, cradled by paramedics and bikers alike. Emma stood on the sidewalk, watching as each child was brought to safety. Tears streamed down her face, but this time, they weren't tears of fear. Tank walked over and knelt beside her. "You saved them, Emma," he said quietly. "Every single one of them. You understand that?" She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Will they be okay?" "Yeah," Tank said. "They will, because of you." Emma looked up at him, then at the 7 other bikers standing behind him, like guardian angels in leather and denim. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "Nobody else believed me. I told my teacher once, but she said I was confused. I tried to tell a lady at the store, but she just walked away. Why did you listen?" Tank was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small, faded photograph. It showed a little boy, no older than Emma, sitting on the steps of a broken-down house. Behind him, the shadow of someone walking away. "That's me," Tank said. 35 years ago. I was in a bad place too, and nobody helped. Nobody listened. By the time someone finally did, it was almost too late." He looked at Emma, his eyes fierce but kind. "I swore that if I ever had the chance to help a kid like me, I wouldn't walk away. None of us would." Big Mike stepped forward. "We all got our stories, little one. Every man here knows what it's like when nobody believes you." Chains nodded. "We might look scary, but we remember what it's like to be small and scared." Emma looked around at all of them. 8 massive tattooed, leather-clad bikers who'd stopped their entire day to save children they'd never met, because one little girl had the courage to speak up. "Thank you," she whispered. "If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Black Iron Tales. We bring you stories that prove heroism comes in all forms, that courage isn't measured by size or age, and that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages." Tell us in the comments, have you ever noticed something important that others missed? Your story might inspire someone else. Hours later, the street had finally quieted. The children had been transported to hospitals and emergency shelters. Social services had launched a full investigation. The media had arrived, their cameras capturing the story that would dominate local news for weeks. But by then, the 8 bikers had already slipped away, returning to their clubhouse as the sun began to set. Emma sat on the patio steps, wrapped in a blanket, sipping hot chocolate that Steele had made for her. Rivera sat beside her, making phone calls to arrange a safe placement for the night. Tank and the others stood nearby, their bikes gleaming in the fading light. "What happens to me now?" Emma asked quietly. Rivera set down her phone and smiled gently. "We're going to find you somewhere safe, Emma. Somewhere real, with people who care, I promise." Emma nodded, but her grip on the teddy bear tightened. Tank walked over and crouched in front of her. "You're going to be okay, kid, and you're going to do great things. You already have." "But what if nobody believes me next time?" she asked, her voice small. "What if something bad happens again, and I tell someone and they don't listen?" Tank reached out and tapped her gently on the chest. "Then you keep talking. You keep speaking up until someone does listen. Because the world needs people like you, Emma. People who see what's wrong and refuse to stay quiet. That's real strength. That's real courage." Emma looked up at him, her eyes shining. "Will I see you again?" Tank smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "Yeah, kid, you will. We're going to make sure of that." He stood and turned to Rivera. "Keep us updated. We want to know she's okay." Rivera nodded. "I will. And Marcus, thank you, all of you." Tank tipped his head, then looked back at Emma one last time. "Remember what I said. Keep speaking up." "I will," Emma said. As the 8 bikers mounted their motorcycles and the engines roared to life, Emma stood and waved. They waved back, a line of giants in leather and steel, their silhouettes framed against the dying light. Then they rode off into the sunset, leaving behind a little girl who'd proven that heroes come in all forms and that sometimes the smallest person in the room has the biggest impact. Weeks later, the story had gone viral. News outlets called it "The Bikers Who Saved 12." Social media exploded with praise for Emma's courage and the Iron Brotherhood's swift action. Donations poured into the Clubhouse earmarked for child protection organizations. Emma had been placed with a loving foster family who'd already begun the process of adopting her. She visited the Clubhouse every Saturday, where she helped the bikers organize their charity events and became an honorary member of the crew. Tank kept the photograph Emma had drawn for him pinned above his desk. It showed 8 motorcycles surrounding a little girl with the words, "My Heroes," written in crayon at the bottom. One evening, as the club gathered for their weekly meeting, Junior raised his beer. "To Emma," he said, "the bravest person I know." "To Emma," the others echoed. Tank looked around at his brothers, then out the window where Emma was playing with the club's mascot, a scruffy rescue dog named Axel. "She reminded us why we do this," he said quietly, "why we wear these patches. It's not about the bikes or the brotherhood. It's about standing up when others won't. It's about protecting the ones who can't protect themselves." Big Mike nodded. "She's one of us now." "Damn right she is," Chain said. Outside, Emma laughed as Axel licked her face. For the first time in years, she felt safe. She felt seen. She felt heard. Because 8 bikers had done what no one else would. They'd listened to a little girl with a teddy bear and a story that needed to be told. And because of that, 12 children were alive and safe. 12 lives saved by one act of courage, and 8 men who refused to turn away. Thank you for watching. If this story reminded you to trust your instincts, to speak up when something feels wrong, and to never underestimate the power of paying attention, please share it. Subscribe to Black Iron Tales for more stories that prove heroes are everywhere. Courage comes in all forms, and sometimes the smallest person in the room has the biggest impact. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Emma's place? For one brief moment, standing in that Clubhouse parking lot surrounded by 8 Hells Angels who'd dropped everything to help her, Emma learned the most important lesson of her young life. Real strength isn't about size or power. It's about having the courage to speak up, even when you're scared, even when no one else will listen. And sometimes, the most unlikely people become your greatest protectors. Heroes come in many forms, some in leather vests, others in pink sneakers. But the truest ones never forget what it's like to need help, and they never, ever walk away.